I think the easiest thing to say about Alexei Navalny's legacy is that it's mixed and polarized. Outside of Russia, many people laud him as being a champion of freedom and the most dogged and effective opponent of Putin, and he made the ultimate sacrifice for that. But there are also those outside of Russia, including in Ukraine, who regard him as yet another imperialist and possibly a nationalist who had an overall negative effect. Within Russia, I'd say a small minority of people continue to support Navalny's project, but I'd say the majority either are critical of him or they just don't think about him that much. And that follows years of vilification of Navalny by the Russian state, of him being a Western-backed puppet. A figure like Navalny just couldn't emerge or operate in Russia, and that relates to the extraordinary lengths that the Kremlin has gone to make sure that that won't happen. They, of course, directed lots of their focus on Navalny to remove his potency as a threat to Putin, but they've also taken steps, especially since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, to clamp down generally on dissenting voices. Alexei Navalny's wife, Yulia Navalnaya, said after his death she vowed to carry on the work of her husband. But looking at her activities, she hasn't yet become the central leading figure of the Anti-Corruption Foundation or of the opposition more broadly. And we don't really know what the thinking is there, why she hasn't become more prominent. But I think it probably speaks to the difficulties of Navalny 2.0 emerging, both because of the particular constellation of characteristics that he had that made him stand out, but also because of the difficulties of the opposition operating abroad and also trying to get its message into Russia.
Россия без Путина! Россия без Путина! Россия без Путина! Россия без свободы!
Мы не можем... Это nach hinten gehen!
5 метров! Bitte!
The opposition abroad is not presenting a direct existential threat to Putin's regime. Looking at the regime right now, it seems relatively solid. And yet, I would say, rather than looking at the political opposition abroad, we have to look at problems within Russia right now. There is a cost of living crisis resulting from high inflation, and that inflation results from the extraordinary resources that are being used to prop up the war economy. We know that the Kremlin sees that at the moment as the clearest threat to its existence. I'm not saying that high inflation is going to lead to a revolution tomorrow, but that is the clear worry for the Kremlin, and it presents a much stronger challenge right now than the political opposition abroad. At the moment, the opposition abroad, I think, are approaching this broadly as a waiting game. They realize that the most receptive audiences are in the West, in Western capitals, and that explains some of the focus of their activities. But it also means that they can have come under criticism from some Russians in Russia who feel abandoned by these political figures, who they think are just cozying up to capitals in the West and living a cushy life in exile.
Нет войне! Нет войне!
Свободной!
Россия будет
свободной!
Спасибо вам, ребята! Мы придем еще!
it's full of lots of big personalities, lots of big egos, and they don't like the idea that, for example, Navalny was sometimes referred to as the leader of the opposition. I would say he was never the leader of the opposition because the opposition was so factionalized. He was a leading figure who was associated with the broader effort to take on the authoritarianism that burgeoned under Vladimir Putin.